Now I'm going to kick off. First I'll tell you a little bit about what we're focusing on, but I imagine that what we're going to talk about here is maybe a slightly different take on some of the discussions and the panels that you've been a part of this morning. So you've been learning from the best and brightest innovators in the industry about how to use digital technology in the private sector. And I'm here to say, well, what about for the public sector? There's such amazing revolutions and changes and really tide changes happening across so many different industries. And the one that's happening now that I'm extremely excited about is at the City of New York. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what is our roadmap for the digital city and to talk about how at NYC Gov is evolving. And we will have the Twitter handles and where relevant social media channels of the city's over 200 channels present so that you can follow along and continue your conversation and continue to engage with the city as we continue. So I joined the city late January, and the first thing that we did, and you can learn more about it on our website, nyc.gov/digital, was we produced a roadmap for the digital city. We thought that'd be a pretty good place to start. So let's look at where are we today? And beyond that, where should we be? And the final result that we came out of that was the digital roadmap. And what it does in the roadmap is defines a path for how we're going to get there. So here we have, joining Mayor Bloomberg to introduce it, of course, one of the most successful technologists and entrepreneurs of our time, who is now leveraging and applying that business sense and technology acumen in the public sector. So the first step to solve this question is to ask, what is our goal as a city? And the question there, I realized, is really more to do with how we conceive of a digital strategy for a city. And what I like to use as a benchmark when we're thinking about this question is really to use this great quote by one of my colleagues at the Department of Transportation, John Orcutt, who said that city streets are the original social network. And I think this is phenomenal, not just because it helps to make it relevant, but it also shows that there's a real precedent in the physical world that we can be applying to our challenges in the digital world. So the next question that we asked was, how can we make New York City's digital spaces as powerful as its physical spaces? We know that New York City, or maybe I'm a little biased, is the greatest place to live, work, and play and visit. There's so much to do. The quality of life is unparalleled. But how can we make sure that the way that we're serving people from a digital perspective is really at the same level as that physical experience? And as a note of comparison, we'll get into this quickly later on, but Central Park has about 35 million unique visitors a year. Those are people, individuals who come and visit the park. By contrast, nyc.gov has about 26 million, and it's growing. So there will be a point when the traffic to our website is eclipsing the traffic to Central Park, one of our greatest open, public, physical spaces. So how do we make sure that when that does happen, we're ready and we're engaging with the public and serving them as best we can to the same great standards that we do in a place like Central Park? So our strategy to realize New York City's digital potential, make sure that we are the city's preeminent digital city, hinges on 4 things: access to technology, open government, engagement, and industry. And I'll just tell a quick story from each of these. So first, access. I think one of the most interesting things is that our libraries, for example, are so crucial to providing access. This is the foundation. If we have all this wonderful technology, as long as everyone can't use it, it's worthless. So we need to make sure, first and foremost, that everyone, especially those from the neediest households, have access to technology. To that end, earlier this year, we were excited to join the mayor and AT&T to announce free Wi-Fi in 22 new parks, 26 locations. That's completely free, and it doesn't matter if you're a subscriber or not. And we're going to be rolling out, or have already rolled out through public-private partnership, more Wi-Fi in more public spaces, including parks. In addition, through federally funded programs called the BTOP, or Broadband Technologies Opportunity Program, we've connected over 18,000 low-income 6th graders with technology. This is thanks to NYC Do It and NYC Schools, also known as Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications and the Department of Ed, because we realize that this serves a critical education function, and making sure that the 6th graders and their families are trained in the technology is actually a requirement to get the broadband access. In addition, we have pilot programs that are in the works to provide Wi-Fi in subways, and every branch of every library has Wi-Fi across the city of New York. Now, open government. Since there is an O'Reilly influence here, clearly there is a great amount of traction and momentum that has happened in the open government movement. So what does this mean? This means that both internally, culturally, and in terms of our technology, we need to be organizing ourselves and we need to be governing in a way that enables others to innovate and that provides transparency into how our agencies and all the city employees across the city, all 300,000 of them, are performing. So the big question is, how can we see our city as a platform? How can we conceive of New York City the same way Twitter and Facebook have spawned enormous ecosystems based on the incredibly valuable data and services and connections that they're forging? We have enormous data at our disposal in New York City, and what we have by making our data open is we enable an even further democratization of services, of information sharing, of allowing smart developers and innovators and social media and digital media experts like yourselves to take that to the next level. So if we're not serving your needs, how can you take it a step further, and how can you make sure that you're maybe creating those great developments and service tools if you don't see what you're looking for in city government? So to give an example of the power of open data, here's a story. So for years, at least since the inception of the NYC Big Apps competition and the launch of the New York City Data Mine, where we share our city's open data resources, we had, for some reason, this file of geographic data of hurricane evacuation zones. And this is the kind of thing where if someone saw it, they'd say, I mean, this is ridiculous, who's ever going to use it, there's no utility, and it just sort of sat there languishing. So that's the before. Now let's fast forward to the after. Essentially, does anyone here recognize this image, or can they tell me what it is out there in the audience? Just shout it out if you recognize what it is. Exactly. And can anyone actually raise their hand if they looked at a map like this during Irene? Okay, so we have a few here, and I would imagine you're all New Yorkers. So basically, during Irene, we had an enormous amount of traffic to our website. There was an evacuation order issued for people living in Zone A. So many people came to the website that at certain points it wasn't able to support that traffic. Thankfully, we had made that data open before, and the result was that we had these beautiful interactive maps that were released freely, embeddable, based on accurate city data from the New York Times. Here we have WNYC, and from other organizations like Crisis Commons and Google, who did an amazing job. And what they were able to do was they far outpaced our ability to serve the public. Millions of people went to their maps when we weren't able to serve those millions of visitors. And that's okay, because the goal of all of this is that when we decentralize it, we open it up to incredible innovations, we open it up to incredible representations of how you can communicate that data and turn it into a living, breathing application in a way that perhaps we weren't able to support at that moment. Another example of open government that was a lot of fun recently was Reinvent NYC Gov. And you can follow this hashtag. So this was the city's first ever hackathon, where we were reimagining the future of nyc.gov, our main digital gateway. Over the course of 2 days at General Assembly in New York City, we had a host of over 100 people developing their ideas for the future of our website. And you can see all of these on nyc.gov/digital. So again, here's the before, and just to give you a sense of the winners, and look at how happy they are, here were some of the winning designs that came out of the competition. So we were able in just 2 days to completely refresh the way that we as a city think about serving our public, our constituents. You see that there's a completely search-centric, user-centric sensibility here, a clean design, integrating location, integrating top queries based on data that the city provided about traffic patterns. Another two examples that show a really interesting theme are these two. So here we have, how can NYC help you today? And on the next one, a more specific question, how might we help you, where you're able to ask a question back. And this was another surprise. We weren't expecting, beyond a search-centric design, to see such a Q&A element. And the truth is that if you go to these sites, they're all active. They were all designed and developed in 2 days. This is a phenomenal opportunity to showcase the power of innovation, especially in a public sector capacity. And what's more, it was at essentially no cost to the city while providing enormous value. And the greatest thing that the developers really enjoyed was they got to present their designs to the mayor. They got to demo them, and he immediately said, they were great. And he commented, but you know, I'd really love if there was voice-powered search, audio search. I'm often on my iPad or my iPhone, and you type in something incorrectly. I mean, we can all identify with this. True to form, 2 hours later, the developers were tweeting on Twitter, Mr. Mayor, we've mocked it up, we've got it live and ready to go. And this is just exciting, and it helps to really bring new thinking to these concepts. In terms of engagement, that's our third element in our plan. The city reaches over 4 million individuals every month in terms of our uniques. That's over 2.6 million on our website, and then another 1.5 million through social media. And as you can imagine, the social media channels are incredibly interesting because they help us to completely reimagine the way that we are engaging with the public. We gather more information, we're able to have more of a conversation, you're humanizing a lot of services and a lot of initiatives. And the end result is that you have a public that feels more clued in, that feels more informed. Again, Irene was a phenomenal example. As I mentioned, when there were periods, for instance, between press conferences or when there were gaps between news updates, people throughout the city were awaiting information updates. Throughout the course of the storm, Twitter generously donated promoted tweets for @NYC Mayor's Office, so they were always prominently displayed for New Yorkers who had decided to share their location. And these updates that were provided by @NYC Mayor's Office led to thousands of people using it. Over the course of the weekend, they went from an incredible 24,000 followers to 54,000 followers just over 2 days. And there were over 32,000 tweets that contained @NYC Mayor's Office. Here we had a few of the sample people who were excited to see it, and the response, you know, people don't always like everything you do in government, but with the response to the way social media was leveraged to inform people was uniformly positive, which was fantastic. We also had 60,000 views on YouTube and were promoted throughout YouTube's Facebook channels. So this is another opportunity to show that beyond the press cameras, we were able to directly communicate important information to New Yorkers in a critical emergency moment. It's not, again, just tweeting what you had for lunch. A couple more examples that on a day-to-day basis are opening up people's eyes to what all of these 300,000 people do across the city of New York. The Department of Transportation was one of the first to go on Tumblr. They have something called the Daily Pothole. It's one of my favorite things to mention. It shows that actually they're working incredibly hard, constantly, to be improving the city's streets through graphics and through numbers. Another big the city's most popular mobile app has been NYC Condoms. It's a free condom finder, revolutionizing the way that the city does public health information and service. And 311 has been phenomenal. So they quietly have launched on Twitter interactive question and answer responses so that when people ask a question, not only is it answered, 311 being our customer service platform for city concerns, but in addition to that, they create a public record that anyone can now visit and anyone can see. Instead of that one-to-one phone conversation, of which there are 20 million every year, these are happening in a public forum. You can also now text your questions and complaints or praise to 311-692, which is the city's short code. And there's the apps. The city of New York has more mobile apps than any other city has in the US and probably within the world. And they're part of the way that we're trying to revolutionize. So finally, industry, and this is where all of you come in and are incredibly important to our future as a city. The reason that industry is an important part of our digital roadmap is because sometimes city government is not the best entity to be developing solutions in-house. There is so much innovation and so many brilliant tools, often at low cost, that we can leverage. So first, we're welcoming more and more startups to the city. We are acknowledging and visiting companies like Foursquare and Etsy and Tumblr, with more on the way. And importantly, we're also engaging all of you developers, all of you brilliant folks in things like the Big Apps competition, which has spawned hundreds of city-powered applications at literally no cost to the city. In addition to that, we've held training sessions with folks from Foursquare, Tumblr, Facebook, Bitly, and more, where we're educating the 200 plus city employees who are communicating through those 200 social media channels on how they can do an even better job. And finally, there's the push for the applied sciences, where we have been very blessed and very lucky, rather, to have announced that New York City is launching the creation of an enormous and very powerful applied sciences campus, expanded or new. And we've had interest from everyone from Cornell to Stanford. So finally, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to invite this audience to think about how can you use that data? How can you look at the city the same way you would look at a market opportunity as an opportunity to serve your market, being the public, and see how we can improve people's lives? I think at their core, developers, technologists, and innovators want to change the world. There is no better opportunity than to use technology in the public sector. And to that end, we are hiring. But beyond that, we hope that you will continue the conversation with us through Twitter, online, through @NYCGov, and to share your ideas for how we can together reinvent the city of New York by tweeting with #ReinventNYCGov. Thank you and enjoy the rest of today.